So I was having an interesting moment of clarity today that I felt the need to share. I know a lot of people who work in diversity and inclusion and spaces like that, right? Lots of really smart academics whose job it is to make the world a better place. And one of my friends, I don't want to say a friend, a fond colleague who works in diversity and inclusion, recently asked me to read over something that she was doing because she wanted to get my opinion on it. And so I read it over and I sent her some notes. And something prompted me to ask her, hey, why did you send this to me? You know so many people with all these degrees and who get paid to be smart. Like, why'd you ask me? Like, I don't necessarily work in diversity and inclusion. And she kind of stuttered. And when I made her feel safe, she begrudgingly admitted it's because I am at the cross section of so many minority groups that she knew that plus my education would make me very specifically able to find blind spots that somebody else might not have. And I thought about that and I was like, oh my God, she's right. I'm a black woman. I'm Afro Latina. I'm an immigrant. I'm part of the LGBTQ plus community. Anxiety disorders. I suffer from an anxiety disorder. My whole family does. So mental health is a huge issue for me and my family. I have an autoimmune disorder, which means that I basically plan my life around the 21 days out of the month that I'm not on bed rest. Like, there are so many things that I grapple with just to get through the world because the world is very decidedly not built for me, right? The world is not built for people of color. It's not built for blackness. It's not built for womanhood. It's not built for minorities. The xenophobia that I've experienced since Trump was in office is astounding. There are so many things that I have to navigate day by day that I don't even think about that do make me keenly well qualified to look at something that's for diversity and inclusion and be like, that don't smell right, without even having to think about it, right? And I was like, wow, it's so crazy how being a minority is supposed to be seen as a bad thing, right? Being a part of a marginalized group, even the language marginalized group, is supposed to be a bad thing. But when it comes to people who are gatekeepers or in positions of power, the knowledge that I have about blind spots is actually invaluable. And so it got me thinking about the way that we frame things that are difficult. I could have seen the fact that by society's standards, I'm at the bottom of very many food chains, whether it's colorism or body positivity or immigration status or sexual orientation or whatever you call it. I'm considered at the lower end of most of society's old caste systems, right? And yet, those very things, the fact that I sit at the proverbial bottom, is the reason why I'm able to attack and approach and dismantle things with such nuance and compassion and mindfulness. It's supposed to be a bad seat, but one could argue I have the best seat in the house. The air is thin at the top, but I can see everybody from where I sit. And even when I ascend, because let's be clear, I'm experiencing a glow up. A lot of us are. Even when I ascend, that muscle memory of what it was like to sit at the bottom for however long I sat there never gets to leave me. So I get to get into these rooms of people in positions of power with knowledge that they don't have access to. How many of us don't acknowledge the gift in our adversities? How many of us don't realize that the thing that we begrudge, the thing that we had to overcome, has actually gifted us with a superpower? I just watched WandaVision the other day, and I had some thoughts about Wanda that my Marvel comic friends have since explained to me. But one of the things that I thought was kind of cool is that in the comic book world, they all have an origin story, right? They all have a story that explains why or how they became superheroes or supervillains. One could argue that we too have origin stories. That bad thing that happened to you, that made you have to get good at something else, is that not an origin story for a superpower? I have a friend who's constantly complaining that he's broke, but his ability to make $1,000 last for weeks and weeks and weeks makes me feel like I might need to take some classes on money management. His perceived poverty, right, gives him a superpower that I don't have. I'm up here ordering Postmates all the goddamn time, right? And so I think about those things. I think about how People who went without have to go within. And then when they get more, they have such access that everybody else doesn't have. I think about how amazing that is. So I guess maybe I'm rambling. I guess what I want to say is we are experiencing a new moon in Pisces, for those of you who come to me for astrology. We're also, in the wake of the 1 year anniversary of COVID and also the 1 year anniversary of the murder of Breonna Taylor. People are feeling very emotional and introspective right now. Some of us are considering, what are we going to do when outside opens back up? Do I get the vaccine? Do I not get the vaccine? How do I check on my family while still being responsible? Like, there's so many things that are happening and that are going to be happening this spring as the world begins to thaw out from this year of unprecedented, historic bullshit that we've all experienced. In the midst of that, it's going to be very easy for you to feel bad for yourself. And I would just challenge you to, instead of feeling bad for yourself, instead ask yourself, how is this part of my origin story? What superpower did I acquire by surviving this? Because I don't believe in having regrets in life, but if I was to have a regret, my only extreme regret in life is the fact that my aunt, who raised me like a mother during the years that my own mother and father were in a different country, she died without me being able to say goodbye. I was in LA and I couldn't get to Boston fast enough to see her on her deathbed. I'm the only person in our family who didn't get to say goodbye to her. And she and I were the first ones to come to this country alone, just me and her. The fact that her journey ended without me, I'm not going to cry. The fact that her journey ended without me is my biggest regret in life. But when I talk to people over the last year who've experienced death because of COVID and what's been happening, when I talk to people who are in soul-crushing despair, my ability to understand them is exponentially greater because I've experienced it myself. And my good days since she's died are so much better than my good days beforehand because that grief gave me access to a superhuman level of gratitude for any kind of goodness that I can get my hands on. The pain that you've been through gives you access to superhuman levels of gratitude if you let it. I don't have the luxury of saying that I took a day for granted because I know what it's like to not have any more days with someone and not know it's your last time seeing them. So, whether you're talking about someone in the LGBTQ community, right? I am pansexual and I've dated several people from the LGBT community. So when I talk about them, I'm not talking as an ally who's detached. I'm talking about someone who's laid in a bed with someone from this community, loved on them, and held them as they cried at night about how the world comes at them. When I talk about the Black community, I'm Black myself. I don't get to be detached. When I talk about women's issues, I'm a woman myself. I don't get to be detached. When I talk about xenophobia, I'm an immigrant myself. I don't get to be detached, right? I could see those as bad things. The fact that I am at the cross section of so many minority groups could be seen as a burden. But I actually think it is my greatest asset. I actually think it is my greatest superpower. My ability to feel compassion for the human experience is directly fed by how much crap I myself have had to survive. And so if you survived, I'm just begging you to see that pain as an opportunity. There's nothing to regret. That is the message that I wanted to share today. Just because something hurts you, just because something breaks your heart, does not mean it's not still conspiring for your greater good. Someone needed to hear this. I almost cried on camera, so that's my cue to get off. Have a great Monday, guys. Love y'all.